Good morning. Great to see you. My name's Marcus, I'm the vicar, and if we've not met, it's wonderful to see you here this morning, and wonderful to have you joining us online as well. How is your relationship with God? If you're new to this whole Christianity thing, you're thinking, what do you mean? And the truth is that Christianity isn't actually a religion, it's about a relationship with Jesus. How did COVID treat you? How are you feeling about the whole God thing, the whole being a Christian thing? Now we are sort of coming out of it. How is your relationship with God? And from the outset, I want to say to you what God's relationship with you is. He loves you. He is for you. You are his beloved child. At the same time, we are called to walk and talk with God. Right at the beginning of the Bible, in the story of Adam and Eve, it says they walked and talked with God in the cool of the day. And it feels like years ago now that I was last properly on holiday abroad, but I remember going to Italy, and in the evening, when it's the cool of the day, loads of people seem to come out from nowhere and they walk and talk together and have relationship with each other. And it's just fabulous in the market squares seeing different people all together walking and talking together in the cool of the day. So how is your walking and talking with God? How is that going? And that's my question for today. And it's a really pertinent question at the beginning of a new academic year, at the beginning of a new start, which is kind of what this feels like. And I believe there's a sense that as Christians, we're actually moving forward or we're moving backward. And that there is actually very little neutral ground. Our relationship is either growing and deepening with God, or it's atrophying and regressing. And this week we met as an Ascension staff team. We have a staff team here. We met together for a team meeting. We asked this exact question: how are we doing with God? How is our walk with Jesus? And one of the things that came up was we felt that actually feelings were not a good barometer. Feelings, how you're feeling, is actually not necessarily a good barometer of this walk with Jesus. Let me give you an example. You might have actually stepped out in faith in a massive way. You might have taken a risk for God, and you might be feeling massively out of your comfort zone. You might not be feeling at all comfortable. You might actually be feeling terrible. But it's because you're doing something good and godly. And that's why you're feeling that way. You're stepping out in obedience and walking in step with his Spirit. And therefore, actually, how we feel on any given day is not necessarily a good barometer of actually our walk with the Lord. And as a team, we were talking about it, and we said maybe actually a better indication of how we're doing with our relationship with God is not how we feel, but literally what we've been doing, our habits. As we look back on our day, our week, can we objectively answer the question, have I prayed or have I opened the Bible? And we kind of concurred that these are probably more accurate ways of understanding how our walk with Jesus is going, our actual actions. I remember someone once saying to me, if you want to know your true priorities in life, look at your bank statement and your diary. Because how you spend your money and how you'll spend your time will tell you actually what your real priorities are. Not the priorities you tell everyone, but actually what your actual priorities are in life. So we've decided to kick off a new sermon series this autumn. And for fun, we've called it, and I think there's a slide that will come up, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective Christians. And does anyone heard of the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, or is that just me? No, there's a few of us. And so it's a bit of a spin on that. And we're thinking about the habits that will help us walk closely with God and how we cultivate those habits. And the first habit that I'd like us to consider today is the habit of going to church. Now, you've done really well, haven't you, really? Because you're sitting here. And so I'm preaching to the converted here. You're here. I mean, you should be giving the sermon because you're physically here. Or maybe you've tuned in online. So congratulations. You are doing habit number 1 of our series right here, right now. And I want to encourage you this morning, really, by helping us all think through and remember why we come to church. Why are we doing this? Why are we here? And then also how we can make this part of a rhythm, a habit of our lives. And so there's 3 reasons that I want to draw out for why we come to church or go to church or tune in online. And the first reason why we go to church is for God. For God. The first commandment is this: you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. Has anyone ever felt in love with someone? I'm just intrigued. Anyone ever at all ever felt in love? At all? Okay, there's a few of us. What I found is when I feel in love, I just want to spend time with that person. I just think about wanting to spend time with that person. And we can spend time with God alone, and that's a very, very good thing. But something special happens when we come together to worship God. Even in that worship song just then, I was so pleased as we were singing and Relu was leading us. I was like, this is great. It's not just me in my bedroom by myself worshiping God. I'm here with God's people. The word for church in the Bible is ecclesia. And the word ecclesia actually simply means a gathering. A gathering. And church is gathering together to say, God, we adore you. And the thing about gathering together is that it is a thoroughly human thing to do. People have been doing it since the beginning of time. I just want to show you some examples of humans gathering, because this is what we do. We can't help but do it. So this is a football match. I'm not quite sure what football shirts they are, but these are people gathering. And hands in the air. Kind of worshipping, I suppose. And then the next slide. This is Glastonbury. People gathering to, in some effects, worship together. And sport and music are absolutely fantastic. But the reason the first commandment is to love God and to worship him is because actually if we don't end up worshiping him together, we'll just end up worshipping other things that won't fill the hole in our soul. I was reminded of Bob Dylan. He wrote a song called Gotta Serve Somebody, and the lyrics go like this. You may be an ambassador to England or France. You may like to gamble. You might like to dance. You may be the heavyweight champion of the world. You may be a socialite with a long string of pearls. But you're going to have to serve somebody. Yes, indeed, you're going to have to serve somebody. Well, it may be the devil or it may be the Lord, but you're going to have to serve somebody. You see, it's our deepest need to worship God together in the presence of God's people, whether we recognize that or not. And as Dylan says, we'll just end up serving or worshipping something else if we don't do that. The Westminster Shorter Catechism puts it like this: the chief end of man is to glorify God and enjoy him forever. And I believe that's true for women as well, by the way. Or as St. Augustine said, our heart is restless until it rests in you. Coming to church is a mission-critical weekly joint gathering with the CEO of the universe and the lover of your soul. And so when we don't gather together, we're denying actually God's design for us, how he's made us, who we truly are, and how God has truly intended us to be. And it's interesting that when God rescued Israel from slavery in Egypt, God brought the people together at the foot of Mount Sinai. And they camped in the wilderness, and it was during that time that God spoke to the Israelites as his chosen people. He identified them as uniquely belonging to him and commissioned them for his service. And when we come to church, we give God both the space to be worshipped and adored for who he is, but also to be reminded that we are chosen by him, we belong to him, and that we are commissioned for his service. So firstly, we come to church for God. Can you just turn to the person next to you? We come to church for God. We come to church for God. Secondly, we come to church for others. Thank God for Bruce. Thank God for Bruce. I just moved to London. I just left uni, and I tentatively started going to church. And to be honest, there was no guarantee I would actually continue going to church. And when I got there, I looked around and I thought, man, there's no one like me here. And I was just about to slip out the back of the service when I saw this big bloke wearing a Welsh rugby top. I did forgive him for the Welsh bit, but it was a rugby top. And I remember striking up a conversation with him, and we ended up going for a curry after the service to discuss the Six Nations and who would also take the heat of the madras we had ordered. And it was a really good job that Bruce was at church that day, because otherwise I might not actually be standing here right now. And when we think about going to church, for many of us, our natural thoughts are as follows. What will I get out of it? What's in it for me? What's the relative utility of this activity versus something else I could be doing instead? Who's preaching today? I wonder if they'll feed me. But the Bible teaches we've got this completely wrong. The Christian understanding of gathering, of going to church, is not that it is a consumer activity, but a contributor activity. That going to church is not about what you can get, but what you can give. Maybe a word of blessing to others, a word of encouragement. Even your sheer presence here today is a gift. It's an absolute gift. And this mindset is totally countercultural. You see, the Bible sees it that the church is not a club, it's not a society, it's not an institution, but a family. We've been singing the big family of God. And Sundays are a family gathering, and I don't know about you, but when it's a family gathering, I know I need to be there. I need to be there for the family. If I'm not there, they're missing a key person. Well, I think I am a key person, but they're missing. When God draws people to himself, he draws them into family. When God saves, he gathers. And as we come together as the church on a Sunday as family to encourage one another, to challenge one another, to learn from one another, to cry together, to laugh together, we're just doing what healthy families do. And in a city characterized by singular living, loneliness, depression, we are family. And no, I'm not going to sing it. We are church. And actually, the Bible goes even one step closer. It says, yes, you're family, but you know what? It's even more than that. You're not just family. You're part of the same body. You're part of the same body. You're part of the body of Christ. And our reading that Sue read to us says that. And being formed together into one body is a privilege, but it also gives us an obligation that we belong to the rest of the body. And if we're not there, if we're not part of it, the body can't function. So church is not a meeting you attend, but a body you belong to. And we bother with church because we all belong. And it's really hard to be church if we're not here. And you might say, oh, yeah, that's all right, but there's nobody like me. I don't feel like I resonate particularly with, my tribe here. I haven't met someone who I really, really connect with. That is the day that your doppelganger arrives. The person just like you, the person who's into the things you're into. That is the day that they're looking around going, where's that Marcus kind of person? And you're there, and you connect, and you've just massively blessed them. Today, who are you called to be Bruce to? Who are you called to be Bruce to? To encourage, to speak a word of truth, to pray for, to laugh with, to worship with, to go for curry with, to talk rugby with, or whatever it is for you. And the question about church on Sunday is not what's in it for me, but how can I be in it for others, Lord? And online, how do we do that online? And if you're tuning in, one way is to write something in the chat box and just maybe say hi. Just welcome each other. So if you're online right now, why not write something like, hi? You could write something nice about me if you want to. Just pop it in there. That's great. Let's encourage one another. So we build the habit of coming to church for God, for others, and lastly but not leastly, also for ourselves. There's an old joke where mum's downstairs getting breakfast on a Sunday morning when she hears her son calling from his upstairs bedroom. Mum? Yes, son. I don't want to go to church today. I want to stay in bed. But you've got to go, she answers. But I don't feel well. She'd heard that one before. There's nothing wrong with you. Now get up. But I'm already running late. She'd heard that one as well. If that's the case, you'll be in good company. Mum, give me one good reason why I should go this morning. I'll give you two. You're the vicar and you're 48 years old. Going to church is for us because when we go to church, two things happen, I believe. The first is we are putting ourselves in the way of love. We are putting ourselves in the way of love. And the second thing is we're putting ourselves in the way of growth. And I want to take the first thing. We're putting ourselves in the way of love. Psalm 22 verse 3 says this, God inhabits the praises of his people. When we come together to worship God, what this verse is saying is something happens. It's like God loves it when we come together and he says, oh, they're worshiping. I'm going to come and inhabit their praises. I'm going to be there with them. What an amazing thing for God to be here with us as we come together. And if God is love, we're putting ourselves in the way of love. Throughout the Old Testament, it was so often when the people of God were gathered together that God came amongst them. In the New Testament, you'll remember, after Jesus was resurrected, it was in the upper room when the disciples were what? Together. That the Holy Spirit came, the presence of God came. And Thomas missed out. That was a bit earlier, but you get my drift. If you want to experience the love of God, it seems that God often chooses to pour out his love when we are gathered together. And his presence is with us right here, right now, as we are together. And has anybody ever turned up to church feeling grumpy? Okay. Does anyone specialize in arguments on the way to church? Yeah, we had a family when I was growing up. Arguments in the car on the way to church were just, top notch. And then you get in, and so often, I've come to church not feeling great. And then afterwards, it's like, wow, so pleased I went. So pleased I went. Better is one day in your presence than 1,000 days elsewhere. Psalm 84, verse 10. You know what? If we want to be filled with love, come to church. It turns out that God seems to inhabit this place when we're here together. If you're feeling grisly, come to church. Put yourself in the way of love. Come. But here's the challenge. It's not just a place where we put ourselves in the way of love, but we put ourselves in the way of growth. Because it's one place where you won't get everything you want. The music might not be quite what you want. Maybe, really, you went on too long, or maybe you didn't do enough songs and it wasn't quite how I like it. I like it like this, and it's not quite like that. Maybe the sermon is too short. Maybe it's too long. Maybe they're meant to be Christian. You won't guess what they said on the way out. You won't get. They made this really funny comment. So annoying. Can't believe they did that. Yeah, the heating, I noticed it was cold, wasn't it? It was just too warm. Oh, gosh. Children's group came out too early. They just ran out and yeah. It's just too charismatic. It's not charismatic enough. It's going to challenge our consumerist, and I include myself in this, just so you know. We can't help. We're in a consumer society. Coming to church is the moment where you don't get it all your own way, and I don't get it all my own way, and we have to grow through it. And it just knocks the edges off us so that we're less prissy and particular about how everything needs to be, where we learn to bear with one another, love one another. So we come to church for God, for others, and for ourselves to love and to grow. And I want to finish by throwing out a few suggestions as to how we can cultivate this habit of coming to church. I think the first thing probably is to say this. If Jesus is the number one person in your life, which for me, I say I'm a Christian, and therefore I say, yes, he is. He is. My wife also is very close second, but Jesus is number one. If he is the one in whom I move, breathe, have my being, if he is the one who, according to this bit of writing above my head, is from everlasting to everlasting, maybe I need to get my head round the fact that carving out 1% of the 168 hours a week to come to church is a big rock that is the right rock to put in place. It's like, if those things are true, logically, I've got to put this in place. This is like rock number one. Boom. Surely engineering my life to include going to church is just mission critical. That's just like, Christianity 101. And so here are a few tips. The first is, let's encourage one another. We've got out of the habit. You guys haven't. Encourage the rest of them, wherever they are. Phone them up. Let's encourage one another. The passage in Hebrews says this: let's consider how we may spur one another on towards love and good deeds, not giving up meeting together as some are in the habit of doing, but encouraging one another. Over the years, before it was my job to be here, so often, one of the reasons I go to church is because a mate would phone me and go, I'll see you there, yeah? And then we'll go for a coffee after. I was like, yeah, okay, I'll see you there. He encouraged me to come, and I went. And let's encourage one another. We're building these new habits post-COVID, so let's just encourage one another, spur one another on. That's what it says in Hebrews. So, top tip 1, encourage one another. Phone each other up and say, let's go, I'll see you there. Top tip number 2, planned decision-making versus feelings-based spontaneous decision-making. I have never in my life felt like going for a jog. If I based my decision to go for a jog on my feelings, I would just wake up and go, oh, just not feeling it today. It's just, no, I'll wait until I feel like it. Once I feel like it, I'll go. After I've been for a jog, it is the best thing I've ever done in my life, and I make sure I tell everyone about it. And with church, what I would suggest is this is the default option. We put the recurring appointment in on a Sunday morning. It's in the calendar. It's in iCal. It's in Google Calendar. It's the default option. It's not like I wake up. How do I feel? Am I in the mood? Do I feel in the mood? You won't feel in the mood. You won't feel in the mood. Can guarantee it. Versus it's in the diary. It's planned. It's an advanced decision. That is the default option. How I feel, that's kind of slightly irrelevant because I know I'll feel great afterwards. And so I'd suggest actually just putting it in. That is default recurring appointment. So encourage one another, put it in. And then the final one is the most countercultural, and it's the one that I didn't want to say, but I'm going to say it. What is your bottom line when it comes to coming to church? So some friends of mine really challenged me on this. They said, we don't plan to not be there more than 2 Sundays a month. We actually base our life and our commitments and how often we leave London and how often we see people on a Sunday morning. We basically have taken a pledge, so to speak, that because this is a priority, because this is a big rock, because God is God, and because church is so important, and because I'm part of the body, and if I'm not there, it actually massively impacts others. We've decided as a family that 2 Sundays a month is our bottom line. It's our minimum. And any more than that, we're kind of not there. And so they've created this bottom line around which other things need to orientate themselves. Maybe that's something to consider, to think about. What is our bottom line? Where do we say, no, that's it? I want to finish by saying this. It's not about legalism. We've all got commitments. We've all got things. We've all got things that happen. So this isn't about legalism, but it's about saying, as we kick off this new season, this post-COVID season, let's put this habit in, because it's mission critical. It's who we are. It's what we're made for. The question actually isn't how little time can I spend with my church, but how can I not spend time with my church? And so this morning, I commend the first habit to each one of us, including myself, so we can become even more who God has called us to be, to live out who we are, the Church of Jesus Christ, here in Balham and beyond. Amen.